You are not thinking. You are drowning. You call it analysis. You call it being careful. You call it intelligence. But watch what it actually does. It paralyzes your body. It steals your sleep. It turns every decision into an interrogation and every moment into a courtroom where you are both the accused and the prosecutor who never rests. For 30 days I conducted an experiment. I killed the voice. Not through meditation apps or breathing exercises, but through a systematic dismantling of the machinery of overthinking. What I discovered was not peace. It was power. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who commanded armies and governed Rome, wrote in his private journals a confession that most people miss. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. But he went further. He understood that most human suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by the mind's insatiable need to process, reprocess, and torture itself with possibilities that will never materialize. The Stoics had a term for this. Catalepsis, the ability to grasp reality as it is, not as your mind wishes to complicate it. They understood something that modern psychology has only recently confirmed. Overthinking is not a sign of intelligence. It is a malfunction of the threat detection system. It is your brain treating every decision like a predator in the grass. Today I am going to show you the architecture of the mental prison you have built. I am going to reveal the 5 mechanisms that keep you trapped in analysis paralysis. And then I am going to give you the keys. But understand this clearly, once you see how much of your life you have wasted in the theater of your own mind, you cannot unsee it. There is no going back to the comforting delusion that overthinking serves you. Let me show you what overthinking actually costs. Not in metaphors but in measurable reality. The average person makes 35,000 decisions per day. If you spend just 30 extra seconds overthinking each minor decision, what to wear, what to eat, which route to take, you lose 4 hours and 10 minutes. Every single day. That is 1,521 hours per year. 63 full days of your life spent in a mental fog that produces nothing. But the real cost is not time. It is opportunity. While you were deliberating, someone else moved. While you were weighing options, someone else built. While you were afraid of making the wrong choice, someone else made 10 choices. Failed at 7 and succeeded at 3. They are now miles ahead, not because they were smarter, but because they understood a brutal truth that I learned in those 30 days. Action is information. Thinking is simulation. You cannot think your way to knowledge. You can only act your way to it. I am going to break down 5 patterns of overthinking that consume most people's lives. Each one has a specific mechanism. Each one has a specific antidote. Pay attention to which one is bleeding you dry right now. The first pattern is the one that controls your every public move. I call it the phantom audience. You are about to speak in a meeting. Before you open your mouth, a film plays in your mind. You see yourself saying something stupid. You see the faces of your colleagues registering disappointment. You see the social death that awaits you if you are not perfect. So you say nothing. Or you say something so carefully sanitized that it has no weight, no presence, no impact. Here is what you must understand. That audience in your head does not exist. The real people in that room are not watching you with the intensity you imagine. They are thinking about themselves. They are worried about how they appear. They are trapped in their own mental theaters, performing for their own phantom audiences. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. You believe you are the center of attention. You believe every word, every gesture, every microexpression is being recorded and judged. But research shows that people overestimate how much others notice them by nearly 40%. You are not the main character in their story. You are background scenery. During my experiment, I tested this directly. I wore the same shirt 3 days in a row to work. Not to be slovenly, but to see if anyone would notice. No one did. I gave a presentation where I intentionally stumbled over a sentence. I watched for reactions. There were none. People were checking their phones, thinking about lunch, worrying about their own tasks. The antidote to the phantom audience is this: assume indifference. Not as a pessimistic view of humanity, but as a liberation. If no one is watching as closely as you fear, then you are free. To act without the crushing weight of imagined judgment. The Stoics practiced this through negative visualization. Epictetus taught his students to imagine the worst possible social outcome. You embarrass yourself completely. People laugh. Then what? You wake up the next day. The sun rises. Your life continues. The catastrophe you feared is not a catastrophe at all. It is a moment that passes like every other moment. Stop performing for ghosts. The real audience is too distracted to care. The second pattern destroys potential before it can take form. This is the infinite research loop. You want to start something. A business, a project, a creative work. But first, you need more information. You need to read one more book. Watch one more course. Study one more example. You tell yourself this is preparation. You tell yourself that knowledge prevents failure. But watch what is actually happening. You are using research as a drug to numb the fear of beginning. Every article you read gives you a small dopamine hit. Every video you watch creates the illusion of progress. But you are not moving forward. You are moving in a circle, gathering ammunition for a war you will never fight. There is a principle in military strategy called the fog of war. No amount of planning survives contact with the enemy. No amount of research survives contact with reality. The map is not the territory. The menu is not the meal. You cannot learn to swim by reading about swimming. At some point, you must enter the water. I spent years researching how to write before I wrote a single meaningful sentence. I consumed hundreds of hours of content about productivity systems before I produced anything of value. I was worshipping at the altar of preparation, believing that if I just learned enough, action would become effortless. Then I made a rule during my 30 days, no information input without action output. For every hour of research, I had to produce one tangible result. Read an article about marketing? Write a single post. Watch a video about design? Create one mock-up. The ratio forced contact with reality, and reality taught me more in 1 week than research taught me in 1 year. Sun Tzu wrote that tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. But there is a corollary that is equally true. Strategy without tactics is the fantasy before irrelevance. You can plan the perfect campaign, but if you never engage, you have already lost. The antidote is simple but brutal. Set a research deadline. Give yourself 1 week to gather information. Then close the books and build with what you have. You will make mistakes. Good. Mistakes are information purchased at the price of action. Overthinking is ignorance purchased at the price of time. Stop researching your life. Start building it. The third pattern is the subtlest and perhaps the most destructive. This is the decision simulation. You have a choice to make. Should you take the job? Should you end the relationship? Should you move cities? The decision matters, so you run simulations. You imagine yourself choosing option A and playing out the consequences 5 years into the future. Then option B. Then option C. You map out every possible branch, every potential outcome, trying to predict which path leads to the least regret. But here is the trap. You cannot simulate reality. Your predictions are contaminated by your current emotional state, your limited information, and your inability to account for randomness. The future you are imagining is not the future that will exist. It is a fantasy written by your anxiety. Psychologists have studied this. They call it effective forecasting, and humans are remarkably bad at it. We consistently overestimate how happy we will be if good things happen and how miserable we will be if bad things happen. We fail to account for adaptation, for new information, for the chaotic variables we cannot possibly predict from our current position. I spent 3 months agonizing over whether to leave a stable career. I ran every simulation. I calculated financial projections. I imagined scenarios of success and failure. And after all that mental torture, you know what I learned? None of my predictions were accurate. The reality was neither as terrifying nor as glorious as I imagined. It was simply different. And I adapted. There is a concept in chess called touch move. Once you touch a piece, you must move it. No takebacks. No endless deliberation. The rule exists because without it, games would never end. Players would sit frozen, calculating infinite variations, paralyzed by the fear of imperfection. Life does not have a takebacks button either. But unlike chess, life does not show you all the pieces on the board. You are making decisions with incomplete information. You will always be making decisions with incomplete information. This is not a bug. This is the operating system. During my experiment, I made a rule. For any decision that would not permanently damage my health, relationships, or freedom, I gave myself a maximum of 10 minutes to decide. Not 10 minutes of agonizing, but 10 minutes of considering the immediately available information. Then choosing. The result? I made worse decisions than I would have with more deliberation. But I made more decisions, and more decisions meant more data. More data meant better calibration. I learned faster by failing faster than I ever learned by thinking longer. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." This is not morbid. This is clarity. If your time is finite and unknown, then overthinking is the worst possible allocation of that time. Choose. Then make the choice right through action. The fourth pattern lives in the past and poisons the present. This is the counterfactual obsession. Something went wrong. You made a choice that led to pain. Now your mind will not let it go. It replays the moment endlessly. If only I had said this instead. If only I had seen the signs. If only I had chosen differently. You excavate the past like an archaeologist looking for the exact moment where you could have altered the timeline. But you are not learning from the past. You are punishing yourself with a fantasy version of history, where you possessed knowledge you did not have at the time. This is not reflection. This is self-torture disguised as wisdom. Neuroscience shows that when you replay negative memories, your brain does not distinguish between remembering and experiencing. Each replay triggers the same stress hormones, the same neural patterns, the same suffering. You are voluntarily choosing to relive your pain in an infinite loop, believing that if you just analyze it enough, you can somehow undo it. You cannot. The past is fixed. It is the one thing in the universe that is truly immutable. No amount of mental anguish will change what happened. The only question that matters is, what do you do now with the information you have? The Stoics had a practice for this. They would write their regrets on paper, read them once, then burn them. The act of burning was symbolic, acknowledgement without attachment. Yes, this happened. Yes, it was painful. No, I will not carry it into tomorrow. I tested this during my 30 days. Every time my mind tried to pull me into a counterfactual loop, what if I had invested in that opportunity? What if I had handled that conversation differently? I would physically say out loud, that timeline does not exist. It sounds absurd. It works. Speaking it externally interrupts the internal loop. It forces the recognition that you are arguing with a ghost of your own creation. There is a brutal truth here. Your past self made the best decision they could with the information, emotional state, and cognitive resources available at that moment. You now have more information. You now have the benefit of hindsight. Comparing yourself now to yourself then is not fair. It is not useful. It is simply cruelty. The only valid use of the past is pattern recognition. Not what if, but what now. Not why did I, but how will I respond differently next time. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Counterfactual thinking is imagination pointed backward at a reality you cannot change. It is the most wasteful use of consciousness. Let the dead past bury its dead. You have a present that demands your attention. The fifth pattern is the one that keeps dreams in the realm of fantasy. This is the perfect moment fallacy. You have something you want to do. But the timing is not right. You will start when you have more money. You will begin when you have more time. You will act when you feel more ready. You are waiting for the alignment of circumstances that will make action feel effortless. That moment will never come. Conditions will never be perfect. There will always be a reason to wait. Another bill to pay. Another responsibility to handle. Another fear to resolve. The perfect moment is a mirage that retreats as you approach it. What you are actually waiting for is certainty. You want a guarantee that your action will succeed before you take it. But certainty is not how reality operates. Certainty is the payment you receive after risk, not before it. During my experiment, I tracked how many times I said or thought the phrase "when things settle down." 14 times in the first week. 14 different excuses dressed up as reasonable delay. When this project finishes. When the kids are older. When I lose the weight. Each one was a small surrender disguised as prudence. So I inverted the script. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, I asked, what can I do with the worst possible conditions? What can I build with no money? What can I create with 15 minutes? What can I start right now in this exact moment without any additional resources? The answer is always more than you think. This is the Stoic principle of amor fati, love of fate. Not accepting your conditions but using them as the raw material of your work. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no money, no freedom, no resources. He became one of the most influential philosophers in history. Not despite his conditions but through his response to them. You are not waiting for the right moment. You are waiting for permission that will never come. You are waiting for a feeling of readiness that only arrives after you begin, not before. James Clear writes about the 2-minute rule. Any goal can be started with a 2-minute version. Want to write a book? Write 1 sentence. Want to build a business? Send 1 email. Want to transform your body? Do 1 push-up. The point is not the scale of the action. The point is to break the spell of the perfect moment fallacy. To prove to yourself that action is possible now, not someday. Because someday is a graveyard where dreams go to die. Start badly. Start small. Start now, now you see them. The 5 mechanisms that have been stealing your life while you called it thinking. The phantom audience that makes you perform for people who are not watching. The infinite research loop that gives you the illusion of progress. The decision simulation that paralyzes you with unpredictable futures. The counterfactual obsession that chains you to unchangeable past. The perfect moment fallacy that postpones your life until conditions that will never arrive. Each one is a different flavor of the same poison. The belief that more thinking will somehow protect you from the risk of living. But here is what I discovered in those 30 days. Clarity does not come from thinking. It comes from action. Confidence does not come from preparation. It comes from contact with reality. Peace does not come from controlling outcomes. It comes from accepting that you never could. When you stop overthinking, something strange happens. The world does not punish you for your imperfection. It rewards you for your presence. Decisions that once took weeks now take minutes. Opportunities that you would have analyzed into oblivion now get seized immediately. Failures that would have traumatized you now become data points in a larger experiment. You become faster. Not reckless but decisive. Not careless but clear. You learn to trust your initial instincts more than your spiraling thoughts. You learn that action is its own form of intelligence. This is not about positive thinking or manifestation or any of the soft philosophy that avoids hard truths. This is about recognizing that overthinking is a luxury you cannot afford if you want to build something real. It is a tax on potential that compounds daily until you are left with a library of plans and a graveyard of unrealized futures. But there is one pattern I have not mentioned. The one that lives beneath all the others. You might be overthinking because on some level, staying in analysis protects you from something you are not ready to face. As long as you are thinking about doing the thing, you do not have to confront whether you are capable of doing it. As long as you are preparing, you do not have to risk discovering your limits. Overthinking is not just a habit. Sometimes it is a shield. And if you put down the shield, you have to fight. Really fight. Not against external enemies, but against the parts of yourself that would rather imagine greatness than attempt it. What are you actually afraid of? Not failure. You have already failed by not trying. Not judgment. You are already judging yourself more harshly than anyone else could. What you are afraid of is the loss of the fantasy. The fantasy that you could be great if you just chose to be. As long as you never try, you can keep that fantasy alive. That is a question for you to sit with. I cannot answer it for you. If you made it this far, you are not like most people. Most people will watch 30 seconds, feel uncomfortable, and leave. They will go back to their loops, their simulations, their comfortable paralysis. You stayed. That tells me something about you. You are ready to move differently. Maybe not today. Maybe not perfectly. But you are ready to stop treating thinking as a substitute for living. I cannot cover everything in a public video like this. There are deeper layers to the patterns I have described. There are specific techniques for each one that I cannot explain fully here without this becoming a 3-hour lecture. If you want to go deeper, subscribe. More importantly, if you want access to the strategies I could not share publicly, the frameworks that YouTube's algorithm would bury, consider joining as a member. No pressure. Most will not. That is fine. But if you recognize yourself in what I have described, and you are tired of living in the theater of your mind while reality passes you by, then you know what to do. Stop thinking about it. Just decide.